Hi, and welcome to another episode of It's Just Racing, hosted by Jim and Jim. I'm Jim.
And I'm Jim.
And we're here to talk about racing. And a lot of racing there was this weekend. I think Jim here is still recovering. So we're going to start off with the Xfinity race. Nascar was down in Mexico last weekend. Xfinity and Cup. Connor Zilisch was on the pole. Did not get the lead. Ty Gibbs grabbed the lead right away to start the race. Then Zilisch grabbed it back. And Gibbs pushed him out onto the grass, dropping Zilisch back to around 5th. So, real quality move by Ty Gibbs to start the race. There's a caution on lap 4 for Sam Mayer. He spun and put himself into the wall. They needed to move the wall back into place, so they had to throw a caution for that one. Ty Gibbs led on the restart. Christopher Bell. He was driving for Sam Hunt. I normally don't ever root for Cup guys in the Xfinity series, but that would have been pretty cool to see Christopher Bell do well in the Sam Hunt car. He was running 3rd, but then spun himself out. No yellow, of course, because just a single car spin. The leaders did the old pit early to flip the stage. And Carson Kvapil ended up winning stage 1. And then they wasted 5 laps driving around after the stage ended. I have no idea why. It's ridiculous, the amount. And this is, what, a 60-lap race? And they're gonna drive around under caution for 5 laps every single stage.
You know, my thoughts, I don't like stage cautions at all on road courses.
I thought they got rid of them.
I feel like they did at some point, but they must have brought them back, and it just ruins the strategy.
It's not good, I have to say. And it wastes a lot of laps. So, Connor Zilisch got the lead to start off stage 2. Led the whole stage pretty much. Unfortunately, Christopher Bell blew the motor with 3 to go in stage 2, so Sam Hunt's hopes and dreams went boom, just like his motor did. Once again, the leaders pitted to flip the stage, and Sammy Smith won stage 2. And then they wasted 5 laps under caution again. Start of stage 3, typical NASCAR chaos. Zilisch was starting first. Gibbs and Daniel Suarez decided, hey, let's take it 3 wide, both to the outside of Zilisch. So Zilisch tried to keep it as close to the inside as he could. Ended up in the grass, drove through the grass, spun, and got collected by Sam Mayer. Then Ty Gibbs and Daniel Suarez just kept body slamming each other like they're street stocks at a dirt track. I don't know what the hell was going on with those two guys. Then Gibbs finally cut a tire and collected a pile of cars. It was stupid, especially considering that the 2 Cup guys who were down there racing were the ones who caused the issue. They went 3 wide, and then they drove like idiots until Gibbs cut a tire and wrecked a bunch of other cars. You don't belong there. Don't be stupid. So on the restart, Daniel Suarez got the lead. About 15 laps to go. He was pulling away since Gibbs and Zilisch were back in the pack with a bunch of damage. Zilisch actually drove his way up to 9th before a caution with 7 to go for Jesse Love spinning. Normally I'd complain for a caution, a single car spin on a road course, but he was stopped, couldn't get it refired, and it's on a blind turn, so I'm actually okay with that yellow at that time. So they drove around for 3 laps under caution. Don't know why. Restarted with 4 to go. Suarez grabbed the lead right away again. Taylor Gray turned it on at the end there. He was right on Suarez's rear bumper for the final few laps. Daniel Suarez, of course, wins in Mexico. The Mexican wins in Mexico. they did the podium. So Taylor Gray was second, and Christian Eckes rounded out the podium on third. Note for you, Connor Zilic actually made it back up to fifth place by the finish after being wrecked out of the lead by the Cup guys. And another note, Daniel Suarez was in a backup car. He wrecked in practice or qualifying, I can't remember. They couldn't even wrap the spare car, so it's just a flat black car with a couple stickers on it, and he went last to first to win the Xfinity race.
Now the race we were all waiting for this weekend, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, over in France. Just a couple pre-race notes I had. There are a few different rules for Le Mans. You have to fuel before changing any tires, so it brings a lot of strategy into pit stops. A lot more people double and triple stinting tires because it does cost you that extra 8 to 10 seconds. You have 3 drivers each per car. I know some of the IMSA races that are longer you have 4, but at Le Mans it is strictly 3 drivers per car. And I don't think there are minimum or maximum drive times, so you don't have to worry about running afoul of those rules. And you can also they have soft and medium compound tires, like they have in Formula One, except you can mix sets. So a lot of people, they'll put like a soft right front on and have the other 3 tires be mediums or something like that. So it brings a little more strategy into that. For qualifying doesn't really mean a lot. It really doesn't mean anything at all for a 24-hour race.
Hey, but it made me feel good.
It did. Cadillac, Team Jota, was on pole. They actually had a 1-2, that team did, the customer Cadillacs. And that's notable because it's the first American-made car on pole at Le Mans since 1967, which was the Ford GT40. So it's been a long time for the American cars.
The Ford versus Ferrari days.
Yeah.
Good movie. Go see it. Well, you can't go see it. Sit at home and see it.
So to start the race, we had a pretty good car count for each class. We had 21 hypercars for the top class, which I was excited about the race. We haven't seen that many hypercars. I've never seen that many in the top class at Le Mans in my life since I've been following it. We had 17 LMP2s and 24 GTs to round out the field of 62. Just one other note from qualifying. Porsche Penske, they had a bad qualifying. They've had a bad year in the WEC so far, and qualifying didn't look too promising. Their one fast car got disqualified for being too light, and another one of their cars, a tire fell off during qualifying. So that's an embarrassing mistake. You've got all the time to fasten the tire properly, and you didn't.
It was not Penske perfect.
It was not. Fortunately, they started doing a little better on lap 1 of the race when the third Porsche Penske car took the lead on lap 1, past both of those Cadillacs. A hypercar fuel stint, we found out, they could all do about 43 minutes, maybe 44 if they stretched it a little, but 43 was the maximum. We had an early incident. The United Autosport LMP2, driven by David Heinemeier Hansen, spun one of the Ferrari GTs, just a little impatient the first time through traffic. He was into a chicane, both cars spun. Unfortunately, he got a little too excited trying to get back on the track. He rejoined the track very unsafely and spun 2 more GT cars. So that's not a good way to start your race or anyone else's race. There were no penalties, I don't think there. I think there probably should have been, but it was probably early and they let it go. The Peugeot of Paul di Resta, you liked the car when it had no rear wing. Well, Paul di Resta wanted to make you happy, so he went through the gravel and brushed a wall and tore off the entire rear wing.
Car looked much better.
It was a lot slower. I bet he had to pit and get that repaired, so the Peugeot lost a lot of time early on. And they didn't have a lot of time to spare.
Because it is a Peugeot.
It is. You had a couple penalties for incidents in the GTs. There's a lot of argy-bargy early on, just jockeying for position, trying to get yourself towards the front. The Corvette of Ben Keating, one of our favorite old guys, he dumped a Ferrari for 11th place, and he got a 10-second penalty. Another 10-second penalty. I forget which GT it was, but somebody else did a similar move. So 10-second penalties seem to be the standard for causing a collision, and those are served at the next pit stop. We found out very early on that the French cars, well, they were very French. The Alpine and the Peugeot, both of them were very slow. Their earlier form from Bahrain and Spa this year was just gone. We weren't really sure why. They were just slow. And the Alpine, on top of that, I feel like they were having electrical problems or something.
No way, a French car with electrical problems.
Well, I hope they were having electrical problems because both cars got speeding penalties on pit road. Actually, between the two cars, they got 4 speeding penalties on their first 6 pit stops. So it's like the pit button wasn't working and they didn't know it, or something had to be going on, so they lost a bunch of time early on. Porsche seemed to be getting the best gas mileage for hypercars, which is very important for a 24-hour race. If you can save a little bit of fuel and maybe save a pit stop, that's going to save you probably a minute of race time. Most of the hypercars were getting about 12 laps for a fuel stint. The Porsche was able to stretch it to 13. So they were getting an extra lap every stint, which builds up quickly. The Ferrari of Nicholas Nielsen soon passed the Jota Cadillac. That was the pole sitter, so he moved into second behind that Porsche. And Will Stevens in the Jota dropped back to third. The other Jota was dropping back as well. At this point, we had a nice little battle for the lead in the GT class between the Aston Martin of Valentin Hasselclot and the BMW of Ahmad Al Harthi. That's the 46 BMW. That's the one I was cheering for because it's got Valentino Rossi in it. But the Cadillacs kept falling back in hypercar. A little after that, the Ferrari took the lead past the Porsche. Through the speed trap, it was showing 226 mile an hour for that Ferrari, which is faster than their Formula One car, as a side note, which tops out, I think, at 219 at Baku. Back to the race. We had a local caution for the Proton Mustang, which lost a wheel, hit a wall, and was out of the race. At Le Mans, they do local cautions, kind of like the virtual safety car in Formula One, but it's only for part of the track. So, say for Sector 3, you have to stay to 50 miles an hour just until they get that cleaned up, which is nice to see that they don't throw cautions and have them drive around behind the safety car, because it is a big track. I think 8.5 miles.
Yeah, that'd be kind of silly to bunch everybody up every time something happens.
Well, unfortunately for the Algarve team LMP2, they had some front end damage while trying to avoid that spinning Proton Mustang, and so they had to pit and fix that. I think they lost a couple laps. The third place Porsche, the one who had taken the lead at the start and it dropped back behind the Ferraris, was given a drive-through penalty for not slowing down enough under the yellow flags, which a lot of the hypercars this happens to if they're not real careful, because you're not allowed to pass under the yellow flags, but when you're going so much faster than the GTs, you might not see the yellow flag in time and pass a couple of them, and that leads to a penalty, which we saw as a recurring theme throughout the day. Once we got to the 5th hour, things had kind of settled in. The Ferraris were showing their pace. They were running 1, 2, 3. Robert Kubica in the AF Corsa, the private entry, he split the factory cars. He was running second. All 3 Ferraris, he could just throw a blanket over them. I think it was 1.2 seconds between the top 3. They were all pretty rapid. In the GT class, you had the 46 BMW battling with the Akotis team Lexus for the lead. Those two went back and forth. They were both looking strong. The Iron Dames were able to get the lead a few times on the pit cycle. They were saving some fuel, trying to get an alternate strategy going. During the twilight hours, we had a good midfield battle in the hypercars between Porsche, Toyota, Cadillac. That was for like 8th through 14th. There was like a good 6-car battle. A lot of good racing, a lot of clean racing. At this point, once it started to get dark, the Ferraris lost their advantage a little bit. The number 6 Porsche, driven by Kevin Estra, started closing on the Ferraris. and he had that 4 or 5 lap fuel advantage from earlier, and so it was looking good for the Porsche. The BMWs were also starting to find a little bit of pace. They were running 5th and 6th. They weren't closing in too fast, but they were in a good position to capitalize on any mistakes. At this point, the Inter-Europol team took the lead in LMP2, and the Manthey team Porsche took the GT lead. But there's a great stint from Valentino Rossi to put the BMW right back on top. So that was fun to see. At this point, one of the McLarens in the GT class, McLaren reliability issues. You know, that's a common stereotype of McLarens.
An English car with reliability issues.
Yeah, they had what we think was a rear end failure. They stopped on track. There was a short yellow for that. Also, one of the Iron Lynx Mercedes had to retire with unknown problems. They had been struggling the whole day. At this point, the 83, the AF Corsa Ferrari, driven by Ye Yifei now, the Chinese driver, he took the lead over the factory cars. So that was nice to see. I was cheering for the 83 all night. And at this point, the French cars, they thought they were battling for the lead again. And there was an Alpine and Peugeot incident for 15th place. The Alpine was given a penalty, a drive-through penalty for incident responsibility, because they both spun and got stuck in the gravel. So more than just the 10 seconds, because it was more egregious. And at this point, Spike, that's Rexy's brother, I think.
Oh no, his big brother?
The AO Racing entry in LMP2, they were leading, and they got a penalty, a drive-through penalty for not respecting the yellow flags. So that's tough. So they lost the lead, obviously.
Was I asleep yet?
Not yet, I don't think. I think you were still up. At this point, the second place Ferrari also got a drive-through for the same not respecting the yellow flags. Kevin Magnussen in the BMW, he was looking strong until his engine shut off. Electrical problems, it looked like, from the BMW. It was really weird. It was going into a corner, the engine just shut off, and it took him a few seconds to get it started again. So he lost a couple spots. Had to go into the garage to see if anything was wrong. They couldn't find anything, so they sent him back out. Kevin Estre in the number 6 Porsche Penske, he led after the Ferrari's pit. And since they were getting 12 or 13 laps, and he had that 5-lap fuel advantage, he was leading for about 5 laps a stint. And he was still saving fuel. He put in some really strong laps while saving fuel. We were riding on board on the broadcast with him, and you could hear the lift and coast, but you could also see him closing in on the Ferraris at the same time. So a really, really good performance from Kevin Estre. At this point, the other BMW of Rene Rast started to catch the Ferraris and actually passed one of them, but then he got caught speeding in the pits, so that stopped his progress and put him back further. You can't make those kind of mistakes in today's Le Mans.
No.
It's a very competitive race. At this point, there were some Ferrari shenanigans. Now is Phil Hansen, the third driver of the 83, driving that privateer entry and still leading. James Collado was about 2 seconds behind in one of the factory cars, and Ferrari started telling Phil Hansen to let him pass. I don't like team orders. I really don't like him in a 24-hour race, though it's less than half over. Phil Hansen didn't like it either because he sped up. He did not let him pass. Unfortunately, he did make a mistake. He was pushing just a little bit too hard, and he got into the gravel, and Collado was able to get past. But he had also been saving fuel. He had a 2-lap advantage over his sort of teammate Ferraris. And so when Collado pitted, he put in a couple of fast laps and came back right in front of him when he got out of the pits. So that was nice to see as an AF Corsa fan. After that, we had a little bit of a resurgence from the Toyota, which hadn't really shown any pace in qualifying or the race. But Sebastian Buemi in the number 8 had driven up to 5th and started putting pressure on the Ferraris. This is about when you went to bed, by the way.
All right.
The 10th hour, The wheel in Cadillac had a problem. It was an electrical problem. They had to replace a torque sensor and the ECU because the steering locked up, which is not good. You don't want that to happen. And this is when the Ferrari started making mistakes. Both of the factory cars had a bunch of penalties. The 51 had a penalty for causing a collision, and then while serving that penalty, they were speeding in the pits. So they lost about 2 minutes in penalties in 3 laps. So that was not good. It was good for the Toyota, however, because Sebastian Buemi was able to move into 3rd position. Just to check in on the GTs at this point, the Ferrari in the GTs has started to show a little pace. Alessio Rivera took the lead from the BMW, and so he led for a little bit. At night, because, as I had mentioned before, the tires, you have to wait until the fuel is finished before you can put tires on. People weren't changing tires at night, both because of that and because you don't want to send them out on cold tires at night. And so I was seeing some of the LMP2s and some of the GTs, they were getting like 100 laps on a set of tires, which at Le Mans is like 4 hours without changing tires, which is kind of crazy in racing. So that was interesting to see. A lot of times when tires are that robust, you don't see a lot of good racing, but I think it was Michelin tires. Michelin did a nice job because there was still a lot of good racing and the tires stayed on the cars. So that was a nice balance that they found. At this point, you had a really nice battle for the lead going back and forth between Robert Kubica and Kevin Estre. That's the Porsche and the Ferrari. For a couple hours, they were just going back and forth, and they were starting to pull away from the rest of the field. And they both had that fuel advantage over the other Ferraris as well. At this point, unfortunately, the number 46 BMW, Team WRT in the GT class, Kelvin van der Linde, he was driving and he was in 2nd place, and there was some problem with the car. We never found out what, but he had to retire. So that was too bad because they had been running top 3 all day and were looking very strong. That left the Ferrari and the Lexus as the 2 cars to watch in the GT class for 1st and 2nd. We had our first safety car of the race, first full safety car, a little over 11 hours in. There was an LMP2 that went off and hit a tire wall, and so it got stuck on the gravel, and they had to fix that tire wall just as a safety thing. So it was a bit of a long yellow. I think it was 39 or 40 minutes they were behind the safety car. So that really mixed things up. It got the Toyota in a really good position in hypercar. On the restart, it was the number 6 Porsche leading from the Toyota. In the LMP2 class, the VDS Panis team had taken advantage of the caution and taken the lead. And the Manthe Porsche had capitalized for the GT lead. Then we had some Cadillac engine problems. The Wayne Taylor car, which had been slow, they had already gotten lapped just on pace, and the engine eventually expired. It had had enough. I think it was Philippe Albuquerque in the car, and it didn't explode. Well, it might have. We didn't really see it. We saw it shut off, and we saw him out of the race, and that's all that matters in the end. At this point, the troubles for BMW continued as the other GT car hit a rabbit on the straightaway. And, the GTs were going, I think they topped out at 187 on the straightaway. So you hit anything on the straightaway, and that's going to be a lot of damage. So they lost a few laps fixing all the front end damage they had. The broadcast, they had a moment of silence for the rabbit. We had another good battle in hypercar. Ye Fei, again in that 83 AF Corsa car, passed the Toyota of Ryo Hirakawa, who had taken the overall lead. So Ferrari was back on top. With about 10 hours to go, it was light again. And once the sun came up, the Ferraris found their pace again. They got back to 1, 2, 3. At this point, the number 18 LMP2 lost a wheel. There were a few LMP2s who lost a wheel during Le Mans. Then we had a problem. The Iron Dames had a problem. They had been dealing with some gearbox issues. The downshifts, the car, it wasn't working great. And then they got punted by Alexis into a corner, and that kind of exacerbated their problems. They had to get towed out of the gravel because they got kind of dug in there and lost a couple laps and were out of contention. One of the Alpine hypercars spun to avoid that crash, which they had not been having a good race, so it was just more of the same for Alpine. And this is where we had some more Cadillac engine problems. The Whelen car that came over from IMSA, I think it was Jack Aitken driving at the time, their engine blew as well. So the first two retirements for hypercar, and they were both Cadillac engines.
That's no good.
Then we had a yellow for the Alpine that was stuck in the gravel. Robert Kubica closes on the leader being another Ferrari at this point, but he's again told not to pass for team orders, and Kubica was not having any of the team orders. He was on the radio complaining. He was saying, "We let him pass twice already. I want to win this race." And he was fast. He had the speed to win that race, and he wanted to show it. And so eventually he did pass for the lead. At this point, we got about 5 hours left in the race, and one of the Akotis Team Lexus cars had a puncture. They were running towards the front of the GTs. They were in the top three, and this ended their race. I don't think they retired, but it put them a lap down, and that was it for them. The Toyota, number 8, which had been running so well during the night, they lost a wheel, a mistake from the team. They got back to the pits. They didn't have to retire, but they lost a couple laps because then they had a problem where the wheel nut was cross-threaded when they put a new one on. So then they had to fix that, and the mistakes compounded upon each other. Another lost wheel for an LMP2. I don't know what team, but it was Joe Van Wiedert driving, and he got stuck. They had to pull him out of the gravel. With about 4 hours left, you still had the Ferraris running 1, 2, and 3. You had 6 cars left on the lead lap. Cars that started to drop off in pace a little bit. The Ferraris were just strong all day. Even that little bit of a blip during the night, they kept it in contention. You had a little bit of argy-bargy on the pit lane from the other Iron Lynx Mercedes, the one that had not retired. I tried to pass someone on the pit entry, and it didn't work, so then they just kind of body slammed him a couple times to say I wanted that spot. It was kind of weird. I'm not sure why you would do that.
That sounds kind of NASCAR-like.
Yeah, I don't know. It did look like NASCAR. But they got investigated for dangerous driving. They were nowhere near the front anyways, so I'm not sure what the point of that was. Besides making people mad at you. Who knows? Anyways, at this point, Robert Kubica had the lead. He started to pull away from the other Ferraris. And this is where the Porsche came back. Matt Campbell had a really good stint. He was in 4th at the beginning. He tracked down the Ferraris. He passed for 3rd. Then a few more minutes went by. He passed for 2nd. And then he started to hunt down Kubica, who had a 30-second lead. He was a big lead he had built. Kubica was driving really well. He was in top form. At this point, both of the BMW hypercars were in the garage with electrical issues, so that was too bad to see. I was cheering for the BMW hypercars. They didn't really have the speed all weekend. They were sort of there in the midfield. They were running between 6th and 10th for most of the day, but the electrical issues, I think one of them retired, and the other came out in 17th place. So way out of it, behind even the French cars.
Whoa.
And that's bad. Then the remaining McLaren had reliability problems and broke, causing a yellow with a little over an hour left. Just a local yellow again, so it didn't change anything with the running order. On the last pit stop, the leading LMP2 car, the Inter-Europol entry, they had a huge lead. All they needed to do was keep it clean, and what did they do? Speeding in the pits. So that's a drive-through. That cost you 40 seconds. It lost the lead. Back to hypercars, you had some more Ferrari team order shenanigans. They were in 3rd and 4th trying to hunt down the Porsche. And they kept switching the cars around. They couldn't decide who they wanted to try and pass the Porsche. and they lost probably 4 or 5 seconds while that was going on. So they really lost their chance at a second place. Really solidified their third and fourth place finishes, as everyone else was way far behind at this point. The VDS Panis team for LMP2, who had inherited the lead after that penalty, they looked like they were in position to be handed the win, but they must have had some sort of problem because they were running like 5 seconds a lap slower than the Inter-Europol team, who passed them back for the lead with like 20 minutes to go. So that was too bad for them. I'm not sure what the problem was, but yeah, Inter-Europol got lucky there, gaining that position that they had lost with the penalty. And both factory Ferraris, I should say, were nursing problems. They said with the engine, with the downshift, something mechanical. So they kind of backed off towards the end and accepted their third and fourth place finishes. At the end, Robert Kubica was just too fast for the competition. He ended up winning in that 83 Ferrari alongside his teammates Ye Yifei and Phil Hansen, for Ferrari's third win in a row, 3 years in a row with 3 different cars. Second place was Porsche Penske. Third place was Ferrari. Just a note, the fourth place Ferrari was DQ'd in post-race tech because there were 3 bolts missing from the rear wing, which allowed it to flex more than the allowed amount, which what that did was it basically opened the rear wing like DRS does on a Formula 1 car, which isn't allowed at all in WEC, and that gave them probably a 2 to 4 mile an hour advantage somewhere in there on the straightaways, which is big when half of Le Mans is straightaway. That was also the fastest car, the one that was in 2:26, so that was a deserved disqualification. Ferrari posted, diagrams of what the parts were, and it was pretty obvious that, it was something. I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, but it was a definite advantage they gained with that. The LMP2 winner was Inter-Europol, and that was driven by Nick Yalali, Tom Dillman, and Jakub Smikowski. So congratulations to them on the class win. And in the GTs, it was the Manthe Racing Porsche who won, driven by Richard Leitz, Ryan Hardwick, and Ricardo Pera. So well done to them as well. And that was the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
And I think that something has to be said for Robert Kubica. Dude shouldn't even be alive.
Yeah, he put in a really great performance, and you forget about the crash he had and the injuries he dealt with. And I mean, he drives one-handed. You forget about all that till he gets out of the car because he's just so fast.
That's just amazing that he was able to do what he does. That's impressive run for sure. Moving back to NASCAR, although you wouldn't think it was NASCAR because it was a road course in Mexico. So, anyhow, the Cup Series was in Mexico. Denny Hamlin did not make the trip. His girlfriend Jordan had their baby on Thursday. So, congratulations to them. Maybe you should marry her soon. Ryan Truex piloted the 11 car for the weekend. Was really a non-factor. Shane Van Gisbergen was on the pole, of course. Everybody assumed he was going to win the race, so of course he qualified on pole. The green flag dropped, and so did the rain. So they had to throw a yellow flag on the first lap, declared it a wet race, and everybody could change to the rain tires. Curious enough, Austin Cindric and Chris Buescher stayed out on the slicks, which was a pretty sketchy move. That restart was scary as hell with them guys on slicks. They could not get going, and they were all over the place, and that was a really stupid move. But anyway, there was a caution on lap 7 when Kyle Busch, it just looked like the rear brakes locked up, and he just went bowling, sliding sideways, bouncing off cars, took out 5 other cars. It was a bummer. Got that cleaned up. Ty Gibbs led after the restart, but SVG snatched that top spot right back. Most drivers pitted to flip the stage and put on slicks. The track was still wet, but it was pretty close. I don't know. I probably would have left the rain tires on, but I'm a 50-year-old man with back problems, so what I would have done doesn't really matter. Ryan Preece ended up winning the stage because he did not pit to flip it. The restart. The front four did not pit. They stayed out on their wet tires. Daniel Suarez led briefly, but then Ty Gibbs got past him and just drove away. Gibbs, not a big Ty Gibbs fan, but he showed this weekend he can drive on road courses. So Gibbs grabbed the lead. SVG made the pass for second, started reeling him in, but he stalled out about 2 seconds back. He couldn't get much closer to Ty than that. Ryan Truex, the last time we'll say his name, he spun. There was no need for a caution. He got it going right away. I mean, by the time the camera found him where he had spun, there were no cars near him and he was already rolling again. But NASCAR threw a caution, so he drove around under caution for a while. On the restart, Ty Gibbs grabbed the lead again. SVG was right on his rear bumper. There's some mixed radar readings. Some people were saying it was going to rain. Some people were saying it wasn't going to rain. Jim looked at his, and he's like, it's not going to rain. And then it looked like it was going to rain. The radar completely changed. So nobody knew what was going to happen. So Gibbs pitted to flip the stage. And nobody else did, thinking that rain was going to come and that they would have to start pretty early in the third stage to get wet tires. So SVG won stage 2. Christopher Bell got the early lead in stage 3, but Van Gisbergen passed him after a couple of laps. The rain never came. So green flag stop, started with about 38 laps to go. Gibbs on that different strategy inherited the lead with 36 to go. And then the yellow came out for Carson Hocevar. He spun and could not get it refired. After everybody else pitted, Gibbs was mired back in 20th place. So that pretty much blew his race. Shane Van Gisbergen got the lead on the restart and did what everybody expected him to do. He was just gone. He checked out. He won by 17 seconds. Christopher Bell was second. Chase Elliott rounded out the podium. And I just want to whine and cry again. Why? Every time that there's a caution on a road course, do we have to have 5 yellow flag laps? It's stupid. There's not a lot of racing going on. Don't make it all on yellow. And that was the end of NASCAR for the weekend.
And then we went up to Canada, to Montreal for Formula One.
Oh wait, no, they're French over there. We?
No, we don't speak French here.
No.
It was a bad qualifying for McLaren. The track did not suit their car at all. George Russell was on pole position alongside Max Verstappen. I know a lot of people thought they were going to have a first lap crash.
I did.
Luckily, they did not. George had a good start. He rocketed away from the start, I think you could say. Kimi Antonelli was able to pass Oscar Piastri on the start. He was able to get up into third place. Alex Albon had a little off-track excursion. He went bouncing through the grass. It looked like it probably caused a lot of damage to the underside of that car. I know if I was an engineer working on that car, I wouldn't want to have to fix that, but Albon did it anyways. It wasn't his fault. He was pushed off, and then he hit the gas. The tires were graining a little more than people expected. Max was the first to pull the trigger. He went on hard tires. George covered the undercut. That let Kimi Antonelli lead for a couple laps. He pitted, and Oscar cycled to the lead, which would be the only time a McLaren would lead in Canada. Fernando Alonso had a slow stop, which was too bad for him because he was running 7th, I think, on pace for a bunch of points. Lewis Hamilton, he lost a lot of time in traffic. He wasn't happy about when he had been pitted. because he lost a lot of time and a lot of spots. He had started 3 spots ahead of Leclerc, I think, and he ended up behind Leclerc after the pit cycle was complete. Alex Albon, he didn't pit when his team wanted him to. They called him in and he stayed out because he was sure that his strategy, it was going to work. And his strategy did not work. He dropped like a rock on old tires. He was in like 8th or 9th when he didn't pit, and he was in 13th the next lap because everyone passed him.
I guess you should listen to those highly paid engineers,
Yeah, they might see something in the data that you don't in the car. Charles, your buddy Charles, he wanted a one-stop, but the team put hard tires on. He had started on the hards, so that made sure that he was going to be on a 2-stop. He was very upset about this. He wanted medium tires to the end, which, again...
It would have been like 45 laps or something, wasn't it?
It would not have been a good choice.
Yeah.
Lando put medium tires on lap 30, however. That gave George the lead back. At this point, it was kind of funny. Aston Martin told Fernando Alonso to take it easy in a couple turns. And classic Fernando Alonso on the radio, he said, "We're racing, not testing." It's always fun to hear what Fernando's got to say. At this point, Max started to struggle for pace. George opened up a bit of a lead. So Max pits on lap 38, only dropped to 6th place because they had opened up a gap between the front cars and the midfield. Alex Albon had to retire on lap 49. I don't know if it was some complications from that early rally incident he had or something else with the Williams.
Or maybe they just decided to punish him for not listening earlier.
Maybe. Go sit in the corner, Alex. Think about what you've done. Welcome back to Formula One, Lance Stroll. 10-second penalty for forcing Pierre Gasly off the track in a braking zone. Classic Stroll. Charles was once again upset that he couldn't have the medium tire. He kept complaining on the radio. I wouldn't want to be his race engineer having to deal with that.
I would think it would slow you down to be pressing that button all the time when you're supposed to be driving.
I think you should tell Charles that during the race.
I never had a button before, so I was slow anyway, but I think it would have been slower if I would have been pressing a button yelling at somebody.
Speaking of slow, at this point, Liam Lawson, he had to box to retire the car. He had been in last place. Really, nowhere all race.
So they actually said over the radio, "Box to retire, we need to save this engine."
Yep. That was all for Liam Lawson. It was close at the front, but nobody could really pass. You needed a big advantage to pass. Lando caught Oscar Piastri with 10 to go.
Lando.
They were running, 3rd and 4th, 4th and 5th, something like that. And Lando passes him with 3 to go. Oscar gets it back on the straightaway. At this point, they're going side by side on the straightaway. Both of them have DRS. I believe I said out loud, "Oh no, I don't like this."
You did.
And well, my instincts were right. Oscar got the spot, and on the next straightaway, Lando decided to drive both into Oscar and into a wall at the same time.
Yeah, he decided, I'm going to go left and try to pass him on the grass instead of going right and passing him on all this beautiful blacktop.
Oscar had left probably 2 cars with. They could have gone 3 wide to the right of him. And Lando said, "I'm not falling for that. I'm going to the left." And he went to the left. And he was out of the race. And Oscar might have had a puncture. He boxed just, I think, to check the tires and make sure, get new ones on in case there was a puncture. There was a bit of a sketchy moment coming out of the pits. I thought it was an unsafe release. There was no action taken. Lando was given a 5-second penalty, but he retired, so that didn't really matter.
And I don't get why that's not carrying over.
It has something to do with he finished like 90% of the race, and so he was still classified instead of being a DNF, and so the penalty was added to his race time. Something weird like that. But it was lap 67, so the race ended under the safety car. They didn't have enough time to clean up the stricken McLaren from the front stretch or the back stretch or whatever straightaway Lando drove into. And in the end, it was George Russell with the first win of the season for Mercedes, Max Verstappen in second place, and Kimi Antonelli with his first career podium.
So third youngest podium fella ever.
So good drive from Kimi. Well done on your first podium. And a good result for Mercedes after a couple of rough weekends. And yeah, I think just a quick note, Lando has got to use his head.
Yes, that was stupid.
Yes.
Destroy a car and lose a bunch of points.
And that's all from Formula One.
And then Junior went to bed because he actually stayed up for the full 24 hours of Le Mans.
I did.
And then he took a quick nap and woke up in time to watch Formula One. And then we ate dinner and he went to bed and he made me watch the Indycar. So I am going to do the Indy reporting this week. And it was the best race of the weekend. Probably one of the best races of the year across any type of televised motorsports. It was sweet. Anyhow, IndyCar at Worldwide Technology Raceway, which is in Illinois, but they say it's in St. Louis because it sounds fancy. Will Power on the pole. David Malukas grabbed the lead right away on lap 1. Devlin DeFrancisco hit the wall on lap 4, bringing out a yellow. Malukas led on the restart, and the Penske cars were 2nd, 3rd, and 4th behind him. Penske finally got their act together. And then Will Power got into the wall. On lap 50, his right front tire, you see on the in-car, it just started unraveling. It was crazy. You just start seeing it coming apart and whipping around, and then he went into the wall running 2nd. That brought out a caution, of course, which erased David Malukas' 3.5 second lead. Lap 50 was in the pit window, so everybody pitted. There's bad pit for Christian Rasmussen, who had a fueling issue. Back of his car was on fire for a little while, but it went out as he started driving faster, so nobody thought much of it. Also bad pit for Christian Lundgaard, who missed his pit, sat there for a while, and then decided he was going to back up on pit road with everybody coming towards him, so that's a big no-no. He lost the lap sitting there, waiting to get into his pit, and then they gave him a drive-through penalty for backing up on pit road, because you can't do that. Felix Rosenqvist was also given a pit road penalty, but he chose not to serve it, so they upgraded it to a stop-and-go penalty, so that was real smart. Felix. Scott McLaughlin got the lead on the restart. Christian Rasmussen had to pit early. He had to pit on lap 86 as that fueling issue didn't get the car full. So that's why all the fuel was burning, because it wasn't in the fuel cell. He re-enters the track after pitting and almost wrecks McLaughlin coming off of pit road. Then Nolan Siegel, stupid rookie McLaren driver, pushes McLaughlin down onto the apron, trying to defend himself from getting lapped, not even halfway through the race. It's just a total bullshit move. I'm glad that Indy actually penalized him. They gave him a drive-through penalty for his ridiculous behavior. The actual green flag stop started around lap 101. My boy Joseph Newgarden had the lead after the pit cycle. David Malukas was 2nd. The undercut was very strong. Newgarden probably gained 5 seconds by pitting 2 laps ahead of Malukas, so it was a big deal. We're at the halfway point of the race. My boy Joe, he's got a 6-second lead. Louis Foster running 10th, gets a little loose, brushes the wall, gets a little loose, overcorrects, gets sideways, comes down the track. Newgarden can either go high or low. The car in front of him twitched like it was going to go high. Newgarden went low and T-boned Foster doing about 180 miles an hour and flipped the car. Extremely lucky. Both drivers were fine. Newgarden ends upside down. Yeah, he was 2-3 inches away from going over the pit wall, and with a lot of human beings there, that could have been real ugly. So Newgarden was out. Penske is having a shit year. It is crazy. A lot of action in the pits. A lot of close calls. Malukas won the race off pit road, but was given a three-place penalty. My apologies, I'm not used to talking this much. For improper lane usage. So when you exit your pit box, there's the first lane, which is kind of a blend lane, and then you have the lane you're supposed to drive in as you exit. He just went straight over into the driving lane. So he was given a three-place penalty for improper lane usage, and so was Scott McLaughlin, who did the same thing. So instead of being first and second, they were fourth and fifth. Christian Rasmussen was penalized again. He was sent to the tail for pitting when the pits were closed. All of that craziness gave your boy the Duck Patricio O'Ward the lead. There was some fantastic racing between O'Ward and Connor Daly. Daly was on a mission all race long. Dude was going 3 wide, up high. He looked like Kyle Larson in a sprint car. He was up against the wall passing people. He put on a show just by himself. It was a great run by Connor Daly. Daly got the lead. O'Ward was right on his wing. Then they just pulled away. Christian Rasmussen, dude was, I don't know, he was fast. He's flying through the field. He's back up into the top 5 after his starting at the back penalty. By the time they started pitting, around lap 192, Patricio O'Ward, I like to say his whole name, sorry, Pato just seems funny. But I'll call him Pato, because that's what you call him. Pato led until Malukas got into the wall running second. That was rough. David was having a good race, little Dave there. They threw a yellow. It was kind of iffy because he kept driving and was fine, but I think after the near miss that was the Joseph Newgarden upside down at $1.80, they were pretty quick on the yellow flag. So I don't blame IndyCar for that one. Scott Dixon hadn't pitted yet, so he benefited big time and got the lead. Some drivers stopped again to top off before the green flag with 55 laps to go. So it's going to be close on fuel. Remember, they were pitting about every 50. There's a restart with 50 laps to go. Scott Dixon led. Kyle Kirkwood started moving. He passed Pato O'Ward for second. And the Penske curse is alive. Scott McLaughlin broke something in the left rear and had to retire the car, as you would say in Formula One. All these different pit strategies people were trying. You need gas, though. So drivers started pitting with 35 to go. Scott Dixon pitted from the lead with 24 to go, giving the lead back to O'Ward, who had to pit 2 laps later, which gave the lead to Santino Ferrucci. I just feel like I'm name dropping here, but it was just a fun race to watch. Ferrucci held on to the lead to about lap 15. He had to pit, which gave it to Marcus Ericsson. He had to pit 3 laps later. Callum Ilott gets the lead on the alternative pit strategy. They were thinking he was going to make it. He was going too slow. He was saving too much. Rosenquist passed him with 11 to go. But then Rosenquist had to pit with 7 to go, giving it back to Callum Ilott. Ooh, is this fuel saving really going to do it? Kyle Kirkwood was coming up on him. Kirkwood was going to pass Ilott anyway, but Callum had to pit with 5 to go. Kyle Kirkwood took the lead. Go Aldi's. Go buy yourself some Kirkwood chicken nuggets. And he got his first oval win in IndyCar, followed by Pato O'Ward and Christian Rasmussen, who they calculated after the race. He passed 71 cars during this race.
That's a lot of cars.
With all his penalties and the fire and having to short pit the second time. Passed 71 cars to get his first ever career podium. So good job, Christian. and we still only have 2 winners this year in IndyCar, Kyle Kirkwood and Alex Palou, who was a non-factor. And Honda has won every single race this year. No Chevy victories.
I know I didn't see any of the race, but I heard afterwards that there was a little problem with Pato getting around his much slower teammate, Siegel.
On the restart. So Siegel was lined up second, but he was a lap down. And Pato was second in real life, but lined up third. And yeah, Nolan Siegel just didn't go. Yeah, I don't know. As Pato said, I think our boy was sleeping. He was. That I don't know that Pato could have won the race, but it definitely lost him a couple seconds. That's for sure. So that's it for us. Longest episode to date. Next week, we all 3 NASCAR series at the Tricky Triangle in Pocono, Pennsylvania. IndyCar at Road America. Unfortunately, Jim and I will not be there because he's doing a 50-mile bike race in Oshkosh in 100-degree temperatures. So lucky you. And IMSA will be racing at Watkins Glen. Anything to add?
That is a 6-hour IMSA race. So it is the next one in the endurance series for that series.
All right. We'll talk to you next week, and thanks for listening.